My name is Roland Westbrook. I'll be 86 in November of this year. In fact, a month from today, I'll be 86 years old. I was born in Waverly, Virginia, and at age 13, I moved to South Boston, Virginia. My mother, who was an invalid, and I moved to South Boston, Virginia to live with her sister, and stayed there until I left there to go to college after I got out of the service. The moment I was drafted, I was working in the Newport News shipyard as a tack welder. I didn't volunteer because my mother was an invalid, and I felt like I had the responsibility to help take care of her. That's one of the reasons I was surprised to be drafted, because she was an invalid, and we were living with my aunt. She was having a hard time making ends meet, working day and night, and I was sort of surprised when I was drafted because I figured she was dependent upon me. But they said that my aunt could take care of her, so I was drafted. And got the notice, went back to South Boston to the draft board, reported in, and then was transferred to Fort Meade, Maryland. Stayed there for a while until we were shipped out to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I had basic training for about 3 months, I think it was. And after the basic training, I was transferred to home for a furlough before going overseas. I had no idea what to expect when I got on the ship going to Normandy. I wasn't prepared for what I would see. I went over one ship, and then they reloaded us onto a PT landing boat that took us up to the shore. In the shoreline, the bodies of many American soldiers were floating in the water and scattered over the beach. They had not had time. I had not gone far enough inland yet for the Army to come and pick up the bodies. When we landed in Normandy, I was 21 years old, and there was a lot of things that I remember about that. One of them in particular is, as we moved inland, we saw a lot of gliders. They let some of our troops go inland on gliders so there wouldn't be any noise by the motors, and there were lots of those all over the place, where they had landed or crash landed or whatever. One of the things that happened as we fought to Rhineland, I was in the Army group that helped free Paris, and that was a real celebration. As far as what Paris looked like, it was very limited what I could see. We didn't get off the tanker that we were riding in, but maybe once or twice, and there we just saw people and buildings. I don't remember seeing any of the skylines or the notable places that make Paris, Paris, you know, like the Arc de Triomphe or the Eiffel Tower. I don't remember seeing any of those. Then we had to fight through the northern France into Rhineland, and there was a long period of time when we rode. I guess for about 5 or 6 days, the enemy retreated, and we rode for about 5 or 6 days until we got up to the port where we had encountered the Germans. I was a cannoneer in the sea battery of the 42nd Field Artillery, and my job was to help load the shells into the breech of the cannon, and sometimes pull the lanyard to make the shell go where it needed to go. And sometimes I'd have to take a radio on my back to go to the front lines with the infantry so that we could call back to our outfit and tell them where to fire the cannons. And sometimes I'd have to carry the radio, and the snipers were always waiting for the person who had the radio on their back to come through a hedgerow so they could get them out of the way and get the battery out of the way, because if they couldn't call back for fire, the field artillery would not be as effective. So after that long ride into the Rhineland, we stayed there for a while before they sent me up front with the radio on my back. And we entered the deep part of the forest, and the weather was bad. It was snowing and muddy. And we got up to the 4 observer post. The captain got set up in the post, and then another fellow and I who had to go up together. We had looked for a place where we could feel pretty safe. So we found a really nice foxhole that the Germans had left. heads were well protected with big logs. Our legs were open, so that the bumps, there were shells that were hitting the trees all around us. Finally, one of them hit the tree right at the foot of my foxhole, and the piece of shrapnel came down and went through my leg. And then after I was wounded, the fellow who was in the foxhole with me said he would go get some help, and so he left me there by myself, and I was hurting. I guess it was a good time to be afraid. If I ever was going to be afraid of anything, because I was by myself and I was hurting, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. There was a lot of artillery going on when I was laying in the foxhole, wounded by myself. There was a lot of artillery still hitting the trees, and I was scared to get out, but I realized I had to. I couldn't stay there, so I got out and found my way over to the Fort Observer Post. As far as awards are concerned, I only got those that were given to me through an act of Congress. I was a private when I went in, and when I came out as a private first class, but through an act of Congress. I think some of us who didn't have much opportunity to be advanced because of where we were and what we were doing, they were awarded PFC. I got a Purple Heart, of course, because of being wounded, and got the ribbons for being in the European African Theater, and I had a good conduct medal. I was a pretty good boy, so I got a good conduct medal, and I think I deserved it. I never talked much about my Army experience since I got, unless I was asked a specific question. I would just answer it, and there wasn't any particular reason. I seemed to be able to compartmentalize things, like when I sold my home about 3 years ago, I moved out of it, and it was like I never had lived there. And when I retired from my job, I left that job. It's like I never had worked there. So the Army was sort of that way too, to a certain extent, and I was able to put it behind me. But if they asked any questions, I could answer them. But I don't really, even to this day, like war pictures, war movies, or war television stories. After you've lived through it, why live through it again in somebody else's life? How do I feel about war? I think that it's war is hell, but I think that it's pretty difficult to put into words how you feel about war. And you wonder, does it really work? And World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars. World War II was supposed to be the war to end all worlds, and it didn't. And look what we're in the midst of now. And so I don't know that it works. And I hope we're going to get out of this mess over in Afghanistan without too many more tragedies.